As we celebrate Black History Month, this year a major milestone is also being marked.
100 years ago, Chicago's Pullman porters who worked on the historic railway here helped form the first all-black labor union in the U.S.
In tonight's special report, we take a look at how this move not only improved worker rights, but also their civil rights. After the Civil War, George Pullman wanted to hire formerly enslaved men to work on his trains as sleeping car porters. Some historians say that created economic advancement for newly emancipated African Americans and helped create the black middle class. Despite those benefits, sleeping car porters did not have the best working conditions.
They worked extreme hours, didn't get much pay, worked primarily for tips, had to buy their own uniforms, had to buy their own shoe shine, any materials that they needed for work, they had to purchase themselves.
Dr. Lionel Kimball Jr. is an associate professor of Africana Studies at Chicago State University. He's also on the executive council for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History.
In New York City and Harlem, which was one of the hubs for the Brotherhood, there were a number of meetings that were going on and talking about organizing. But the problem that they found is that spies for the Pullman Company would often infiltrate some of these meetings.
The porters who wanted to unionize needed a leader Pullman couldn't intimidate and still had some charisma.
In comes A. Philip Randolph, who was that person.
Kimball says Randolph was a newspaperman from New York who bought a one-way ticket to Chicago to see if the union could get started.
And he comes here and he meets with this guy named Milton P. Webster, who was a big, booming, very large man, very domineering, but very, very respected within the ranks of the Pullman porters. The belief was Randolph comes to Chicago, and if he was able to appeal to Webster, then he would win the respect of the Pullman porters nationwide.
Why couldn't Randolph do that with the porters in New York City?
The seed of equality was planted in Chicago. Chicago was founded by DuSable. So if you look across America, people are coming to Chicago, DuSable land, black land. A black man founded it. If we can't get equality there, we can't get equality anywhere.
After Randolph and Webster meet, the rest, as they say, is history. Starting with Randolph becoming the first international president for the union and Webster the international vice president.
If it wasn't for A. Philip Randolph and the Pullman porters, there wouldn't be E.D. Nixon.
This is such a great story because E.D. Nixon was not somebody who would have got big recognition. He wasn't well educated even for the day.
Dr. Kim Delaney is the Vice President of Education and Programs at the DuSable Black History Museum. She told us more about the Pullman porter in Montgomery, Alabama, who was mentioned by A. Philip Randolph.
E.D. Nixon, not only did he bond Rosa Parks out of jail, but he also connected other organizations and mobilized people in that effort.
That's not all he did during the Montgomery bus boycott.
Nixon was the person who invited a 26-year-old minister from Atlanta to lead the movement in Montgomery.
Kimball says if it wasn't for E.D. Nixon, we might not have had a Dr. King.
So looking at this movement in 1925 and what it provided for us all the way to 1963 is something that I think we don't pay enough attention to, because I think it's a very important part of the Black civil rights struggle.